Good evening, and welcome to the City of Norwich City Council meeting for April 3rd, 2017. I have a greeting for you. Vahe garu gi ka kalsa. Vahi garu gi ki fata. If we could all stand, whoever can. And Alderwoman Gould, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen.
And Mr. Martin, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you would all remain standing just for a moment, please. On April 3rd, 1962, the Norwich Fire Department lost 4 men in the Van Tassel warehouse. They are William Sheridan, Leonard Cunahan, Edward Romano, and Carol Burke. And if we could just have a moment of silence, please, in remembrance of these important people. And I thank you.
Adoption of minutes, March 6th and 12th, 2017.
A motion and a second, please. Alderwoman Philbrick, Alderwoman Gould. Is there any corrections, questions? Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye. And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Proclamation, National Sex Day.
Well, at least everybody's awake now. It's a great honor that I be able to read this proclamation. Whereas Sikhism is a religion founded in the Punjab region of South Asia over 5 centuries ago and introduced to the United States in the 19th century, and whereas Sikhism is the 5th largest world independent religion with approximately 30 million adherents from diverse backgrounds throughout the world, including 700 adherents in the United States. And whereas Sikhs in the United States pursue diverse professions and walks of life, making rich contributions to the social, cultural, and economic vibrancy of the United States, including service as members of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas Vaisakhi is one of the most religiously significant days in Sikh history, commemorating the creation of Khalsa, a fellowship of devout Sikhs by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. And whereas the Sikh religion is based on a belief in one God and the equality of all human beings. And whereas the celebration of Vaisakhi includes performing seva, which is selfless service, such as providing free meals to all visitors to the Sikh Gurdwara, houses of worship. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Deborah Hinchy, and Norwich City Council President Pro Tem Peter Albert Nystrom, on behalf of the Norwich City Council and the citizens of the city of Norwich, do hereby wish the Sikh American community a joyous Vaisakhi celebration on April 14th, 2017. Mool Nankar. Thank you. I was doing pretty good. And declare Vaisakhi Day as National Sikh Day, and this is dated the 3rd day of April, 2017. There you go, sir. Come, let's go.
One's got to get in front. Where's coming in?
Now, what did that mean?
It was good.
Well, they respond.
Thank you. See you. Thank you so much for honoring us.
Thank you. Good pigment. Right? No cancer there.
Right? Yeah. No.
Letter of resignation by DeCamales M. Gelopoulos from the Community Development Advisory Board.
Is there a motion and a second, please? President Pro Tem and Alderwoman Gould. For the public's information, we would like to thank Demo for his many years of service. He's done a lot of hard work for the city. Those in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous.
Letter of resignation by Zato Cambidia from the Personnel and Pension Board.
Motion and a second, please. Mr. Martin and Mr. Braddock. For the public's information, Zato has also given a lot of his time, and we thank him very much for all of his service. Those in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Unanimous.
City Manager's Report.
See if it's working. Good.
I can hear you.
That's good. Nice invention.
While they're setting up, in case anyone didn't know, this is about our budget. We're not showing movies tonight.
This is what? See jobs. Oh,
I promise to get done so you can watch the basketball game if you're so interested. I
We're
hope
trying to,
that will do that.
exactly.
Notice I don't go near the laptop. Save that for,
That's a wise decision.
yes, it is.
sit down.
I'll give him everything.
Oh, okay.
I always hold my breath before it goes on, to make sure it goes on.
Get my checks.
Not this.
Get it restored.
I don't have anything in it.
This is the most difficult part, is to try to face the council and face the audience
Well-
at the same time, but,
Face the
so if I
audience.
have my back to the council once in a while, please
Don't worry about it.
excuse me.
Absolutely.
That's fine, John. We understand you still like us.
It's not,
I'm so proud of you. Sit back.
looks like it's on. Okay. I had no doubt that we had it on. Well, good evening, everyone. This is actually my second budget. I've been here a year and 3 months, almost 15 months. And I would say that this budget is more of a challenge than last year's budget, and probably one of the bigger challenges that I've had doing budgeting for, I don't want to say many decades, but quite a few years. And the reason is that we have a governor's budget that makes some very different changes to how funding and expenditures are laid out. And the idea is to try to figure out what the final state budget's going to look like and make that determination as you're doing the budget live, so to speak. So we have a couple of different scenarios, and you'll have to bear with me. It's a little more complicated than normal, and I'll try to make it as straightforward as I can. These are the four basic priorities that I think follows us from year to year. One is we always try to provide some relief for taxpayers. Don't always succeed, but it is a priority. We're trying to collaborate and share resources among the departments. I think you'll see a little bit more of that this year, and we hope to continue that in the years to come. Maintain the city's infrastructure. That's all the capital projects. We want to invest in our city to make it not only safe but desirable for business, industry, and for citizens to locate here and to stay here. And also provide for some increase in education funding. We certainly know that that's an important component of the city, is our education, and it's my role to make a recommendation on that, obviously. Let's talk a little about the revenue factors, because those are some of the more complicated areas. We're going to put it into increases and decreases, so we have kind of a matrix of what the governor has proposed. On one hand, the governor has proposed that we would be able to collect real estate taxes on our hospital. Right now, it's tax exempt, and although there is a payment in lieu of taxes, it is nowhere near 3.8 million. This would be offset by hospital pilots and college pilots being eliminated in the budget. Obviously, this is a controversial component, and many hospitals are obviously against it. It's another expense on their bottom line. But it's a significant increase in revenue if we were to have it. The biggest change and increase is 10.6 million in special education funding. This was really, I think, the governor's major component to try to recognize that certain school districts have a challenge in funding and providing education for children of special needs. This tries to address that, and I'm sure that when the Board of Education gives their presentation, they'll talk more about that, but it's been a chronic issue and very difficult to budget. $2.6 million in ECS funding, that's the grant for education, has been cut out of this budget. This is the major one that's been cut in the region by most municipalities, affecting their tax rate quite a bit. Of course, there is a $3.3 million expenditure for the city's share of the teacher retirement board, or the teacher pension fund. This is approximately 25% of what the state allocates to the city's pension plan, of the city's teachers' pension plan, which is actually funded and run by the state. The city never had to share in this fund before, and this is obviously a new expenditure. There's an additional $800,000 approximately in municipal revenue sharing, and all other is about $187,000. So the bulk of it, as you can see, is really the special ed funding and the hospital real estate tax. So if the governor's proposed budget stayed intact, there would be a net positive impact after we subtract all the pluses and minuses of about $8.7 million. So how do you approach a budget where you have $8.7 million of potential aid, but you know that there'll probably be changes to that before the end of the legislative season this year, which is in June? So how do you contemplate such a big difference in what you have now and what you anticipate getting at year end? I try to visualize the glass being half full rather than half empty. We're starting at a situation of positive revenue. Of course, when the legislature completes their work, the 8.7 might be a lot different. We've had grand list growth. About half of it was the solar farm. Solar farms in the northern end of the city. That's about $15.7 million of the 15. And then we also had about $15 million an increase in the collection rate on real estate and personal property. This is a little bit complicated, but we no longer have a collection for autos. It's standard at 32 mils. And because we're guaranteed 32 mils from state revenue, we don't collect it anymore. And because the auto tax was always the most unreliable in collection, that's eliminated now, so it's driven up the collection rate for the rest. In other words, it was about 89% auto tax collection, and now that's eliminated, so the other ones, which were about 96, 95, 96, go up about 1%. We are still aggressive on personal property audits to look and make sure that all businesses pay their fair share. We have building permit software that allows the building department to talk to the assessor's records, so when there's a building permit, the assessor gets to know about it so they can go out and ascertain whether there's an increase in the value of the building. What's on the horizon in 10/1/18 is another revaluation. They come every 5 years, and we have to set aside monies again for the revaluation. We also have the 10% share of Norwich Public Utility revenues. You can see that it's been fairly steady between, in the last 8 years, it's been between 7 million and about 9 or 8.5 million. This year it slightly decreases. This number is based on a number from 2 years ago, which we use to calculate the share. And in that year, if you recall, it was a very mild winter and there was less utilities being spent. Therefore, their revenue was down a little bit. So our revenue is down about 190, 180 something thousand dollars. Not a large amount, but still down slightly over the previous year. Let's talk about expenditure factors. This is a pie chart that shows our major cost drivers in the general government share. You can't have a budget presentation without having a pie chart, so we have our pie chart. You'll note that there's 2 items. The gold is the pension cost for this year increase, $720,000, and the health insurance is the other major driver of $800,000. Add those 2 up and you get about 1.5 million of the 1.8 million increase. All other expenditures, wages and everything else only adds up to about $300,000. So you see where our funds are going, mostly pension and health insurance increases. We'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to try to mitigate those increases in the future. Just for a benefit of the citizens, in 2013 and 15, the town performed an actuarial analysis of the pension plan. The assumptions were revised to lower the assumed rate of return, meaning that we have to plan on what we think the investment return is going to be in the future, and we've lowered that to reflect historical analysis. We've lowered it from 8.25 to 7 3/4, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you amortize it over 30 years for multi-million dollars, it's quite a bit of impact. That's a conservative approach, and it's the right approach. It means that our pension fund will not have liabilities going out many years. There are other more unfunded pensions around the state, and that is a real albatross around people's necks. We also shortened the amortization period, again, more conservative approach. And we've looked at the salary increases, retirement rates, mortality and terminations. And actually this was We've had lower growth of salary increases, so that's a positive, actually, for the pension plan. We're catching up with these assumptions by increasing the pension contribution, phasing it in at 15% a year for 4 to 5 years. This is the third year. We have at least one more and possibly one more after that. So it's possible after next year, that'll be the last of the catch-up, and we'll be more at an even keel on the pension. So that's good news in the future. Doesn't help us this year, but it helps us in the future. That total amount is about $720,000. Remember the pie chart. Health insurance increases about $800,000. The city is self-insured, which means that we pay first dollar of any claim, and we have a fund and an administrator that pays out the claims. It's Blue Cross that actually administers the funds, but we hold on to the money until it gets dispersed. We had an exceedingly bad year, meaning that we paid out a lot of claims previous year, so you have to catch up in the fund to make it sound, hence the $800,000 increase. We are trying to mitigate that by doing some things such as a dependent eligibility verification, which is a survey to make sure that any dependents are eligible to be on the plan are eligible. So if you're 27 years old and you're still on the plan, obviously you're not eligible anymore. This audit allowed us to curtail some errors that were in the plan. We're also moving towards what we call high deductible health plan, or HSA. We'll be moving to that. We've had 3 contracts settled this year and all have HSAs in it. We'll be negotiating with the latter part of our unions starting in the next few weeks or months. And of course, HSAs will be part of the program for that. And we are hopeful that that will slow the rate of growth. We also went out for a new employee benefits broker, and we saved quite a bit of money on the broker fees. Strategies for developing the budget. I know this is difficult to see, but this shows the percentage increase or decrease by our famous example, which is the average house and the average car. It's hard to read here, but the tax on the average home in the city, and if your taxes is higher than that, that means you're above average, and if your taxes are lower than this, that means your house is paying less than the average. This year, we're estimating, based on the governor's budget, that a taxpayer would pay $3,752. A total with the car tax. Remember, the car tax went down now to 32 mils from 37. $316, a total of about $4,070. Last year's adopted budget had a total of about $4,276. So, if the governor's budget was enacted, we would have a reduction in taxes of about 4% on home, 13% on cars. The total tax for the town consolidated district would be 4.8%, and for the city consolidation district, about 2%. An average taxpayer, as I said, will see a decrease in property taxes with the governor's budget. Now, of course, as I said, we're hopeful that the governor's budget will be approved because it's very beneficial to the city, but we're realistic to know that that may not happen. That's why the glass is half full and not completely full. the mill rate changes. So the general fund is 4%, TCD, no change. CCD looks like it goes up 14%, but that's an anomaly because it has the same fixed cost, but none of the other larger costs to offset it, such as capital budget debt and other expenditures. And remember, there's a cap on motor vehicle taxes, and it's lowered to 32 mils by state legislation. What are we doing to try to share resources and other initiatives? We're discontinuing the operation of the city's transfer station. Doesn't mean that we're not going to do transfer duties anymore, but it means that we are going to have another entity perform that task. So when we have a vacancy, which we will have this year, we are not filling the vacancy, and we will have savings in the personnel area of the government on that. So, but we will still be using the transfer station. We're sharing staff between tax office and city clerks. We're moving human services staff out of 80 Broadway and into other existing city buildings. We pretty much have studied that to death over the last year, I would say, and I think we have a good cost-effective solution. Some of the staff would move into the city hall and some would move into a renovated recreation building. But it works, and then that building, that way, gets sold, put back on the tax rolls, hopefully. But even if it's not sold right away, we can cut down on overhead and expenses for it. We are increasing IT staffing in January of 2018 in this budget, but we think that we're actually going to save money on that because we'll have less downtime and make departments operate more efficient. Right now, we only have 2 information technology people to handle everything within the city government. We're woefully understaffed in that area. So let's talk about staff reorganization for a couple of minutes. We have some additions and subtractions, and they kind of negate each other pretty much. I talked about the IT technician. We would phase that in January of 2018. We're recommending the assessor have an administrative clerk. As we talked about before, the assessor is our point of income within the city. Most of our income is derived from the grand list, and if you can't administer the grand list, get all the records up to date, make all the inspections, then you're losing revenue. So this position really pays for itself. We're looking at reorganizing and looking at our recreation department and having a shared receptionist between adult and family services and recreation. And we're looking to fill the recreation director position that's been vacant for 3 years on a part-time basis only. It's been vacant. It's been very difficult to run the program over the last few years. Our staff person that was left has done a stellar job, but really needs a help with a recreation director. So we're going to ease it in and see how the part-time situation works. The Waymaster clerk, that's the transfer station reduction. We're going to eliminate 2 laborers. They work in the transfer station. We are going to create a heavy equipment operator and a light equipment operator. That's where we need some of the work and some of the staff, so they negate each other as far as staffing. We're going to eliminate the Planning and Community Development Director. As you might know, the Planning and Community Development Director left employee about 2 months ago, and we don't plan on filling it. We plan on filling it with a lower level CD person that would be paid entirely out of the CD block grant. We would give the city planner a stipend for supervising, planning, and neighborhood services. So there's some coordination and supervision within the various divisions there. We would eliminate a code enforcement secretary position. So the net increase altogether, if you have the additions and subtractions, is about one full-time equivalent. And the one that I recommended are important to our revenue picture. Maintaining infrastructure, we talked about that. Some of the highlights, and we'll talk in detail about the capital budget when we talk about the budgets more. We have the road and infrastructure improvements. We have about $1 million we're recommending. We have a vehicle wash station. This is a environmentally, I don't think it's mandated. It's close to being mandated, but it is an efficient way of washing all the vehicles, getting all the salt off of them, and allowing them to have a longer useful life with less corrosion. We're talking with the volunteer departments and our regular downtown department about the fire apparatus acquisition. There hasn't been new fire apparatus in the volunteer companies in 9 years, and we're taking a very close look at that this year, and we have monthly meetings, sometimes every other week, with all the fire chiefs as we talk about implementing this program. Finally, there's police and fire safety equipment sprinkled all through the budget with the fire and police departments, which we'll talk a little more about. Let's try to make this an apples to apples comparison now, because it's very difficult because of the way the grants work. Right now, in 16-17, the budget we're in now, there's a $77 million figure. In 17-18, I'm recommending 79.3. That's a change of 2.3 million or 3%. From that, you have to subtract out the special education grants for 16, and if you want to do apples to apples, you would do it again in 17. So the net budget that was actually budgeted for in 16 was 75,430,000, and it would be 77,759 this year. Then, to make it more complicated, we now have to take the special education grants, which is a new grant of 10,000,005, subtract that from the 77, and you get 67. Then, of course, you've got to add back the pension costs, which are 3.3 million. So the impact on education, if all the grants were received, would be a net reduction of 6.5%, but at the same time, it would increase the core spending for education by 3%, which is what the request was this year. I do want to say that that was a number that I did not change. It's what I had recommended last year, and then it went down to 2%. So 3% is a very reasonable number. And in light of our revenue sources, it's a possibility that it can be maintained. So the mill rate calculation for 16 and 17, I'm not going to get into the real details of it, but the general fund operations are up. Remember, 1.8 million, remember the pie chart? 1.5 is the pension and health benefits, 300,000 is the rest. That's 4.5. Debt service is level. Subtract out those amounts and you get the capital improvements. This is a key area. I'm recommending about $1.8 million additional capital improvements. So finally, we look at the special revenue districts, recommending 7.7, and in the TCD, 587,000. Plus a Norwich Public Utilities budget of 94.8 million. Total 224,902. That's an actual reduction of 0.16 from last year if all the grants come to being. This is another way of showing it. The proposed general fund mill rate would be $39.54, plus the town consolidated district of 47. So the general fund and TCD would be 40. That's a decrease from the previous year of 41.69, or about 4%. And the others are similar reductions. The CCD goes down about 1.1%. Here's the big elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about myself. I need to lose weight for it. What if the adopted state budget differs from the governor's proposed budget? We have some hypothetical scenarios, because remember I've said we don't have a guarantee that we're going to get that budget. So what we've done in this scenario is we eliminated the real estate tax and we put back in the hospital pilot. We assume that we receive the same ECS and special education funding as the current fiscal year. So we've taken the governor's increase in special ed and taken that out. And we're making an assumption that the TRB, the teacher's retirement contribution, is eliminated. How would we go about funding the budget then? Well, we have one area that's fairly flexible. We would eliminate about $1.8 million of capital spending. Remember, I increased it to $4 million. So we would automatically decrease that to the ordinance level that's recommended, which is about 2.4. I know the education doesn't want to hear this, but we would probably have to decrease a request from 3 to 2%. Net result, that would be a general fund mill rate increase of 3.76%. That's assuming that we get no revenue increase. Now, in reality, I'm hoping that there is recognition of some revenue increase for the city. We'll see what happens with that. If we do get any revenue increase, then the 3.6% mill rate increase would drop to a more manageable level. But we really don't know with that. So we have a real spectrum. We have a reduction in taxes of 4 to 5%, or we have an increase in taxes of 3.7%. And we do run the gamut there, and we show what the various scenarios are. I thank you for your attention. What we need here is the schedule. Tomorrow will be public safety. On Thursday, the 6th, will be the schools, public utilities, public works, human services, recreation. Then we meet again on April 13th and April 17th. Finally, the council will review the budget and make recommendations in May, and we hope to have a tentative date for budget adoption of June 5th of this year. As I said, that's close to what the legislature's goal is, to do a budget. If we had to delay it one more week, we could by charter. You have to have a budget fixed by the second Monday of June by charter, or the budget that the city manager proposes stays in effect. So with that, I'll end my proposal for tonight, and we'll be meeting with the various department heads during the next 3 weeks or so.
Thank you.
Citizen comment on resolutions.
I would like you to come up and speak on the resolutions at hand tonight. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Be sure you speak into the microphone. The first person who comes up is going to have to pull the microphone back in order. And make sure that you state your name and address. Something's beeping. Something's beeping. Here's something beeping here.
Is it outside? Is it a car backing?
I don't know.
There's a window open. So
Oh, okay, maybe it's a car.
Good evening. My name is Martin Rutchick. I've lived in Norwich for many, many years, about 75. Now reside in Mystic. I own a piece of property at 126 Broadway that I have owned for a number of years. I have followed what has been happening to our community, and with great sadness. And I feel that the responsibility laid upon you as older person is a very difficult one. When you have to deal with friends and families and make decisions that can be negative and harmful, no one really wants to do that. I want to comment before I get into my other comment. I know I have three minutes. The budget that the city manager has worked on, and with an excellent presentation, the public utilities budget is not restricted to 10%. They can give more than 10%. And the question that I have is, who decides?
I'm sorry, sir, we're not public comment about the budget today. Would you please continue your remarks on the resolutions at hand?
Which is the resolution at hand?
Number 1 through 9.
Does that resolution or those resolutions have anything to do with the unfortunate circumstance that we have in our community, such as Kentucky Gate or trips to...
Yes, there are 3, number 7, number 8, and number 9.
So
Please,
I can say something.
yes, but not about the budget. We'll
Okay.
have a public hearing on that at a later date.
Well, that'll be fine if I can make that. I've followed what has been going on, and my information comes, as most of us, from the news media. I have gone so far as to review the charter dealing with the Public Utilities Department, dealing with CMEC, also dealing with the ethics, and what you as older persons can do. So far, I think you've been sitting back and leaving it to someone else. I don't know of anything that this council has done in order to look into what has happened and to cause such embarrassment on the city of Norwich, city of Groton, and the other communities. And let me tell you quickly how I come to this fervor. I'm an attorney, and I had, a year and a half, 2 years ago, a family with 3 little kids, and they came to me because their electricity was
I'm
being
sorry,
turned
sir.
off.
Thank you very much.
I'm not through.
No, I'm
One
sorry,
second.
sir.
Because it was being
Sir,
turned off.
please,
I could not get it turned on because my wife and
please turn off the
my
mic.
wife and I
I'm
expected-
sorry, sir. Your time is...
True.
You to
All right. You wanna
from
hold
the
me back?
podium.
You can hold me back. That's
Thank
fine.
you, sir.
You know,
Is there someone else who wishes to speak?
thank you very much.
Is there someone else who wishes to comment on the resolutions? Yes, sir.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Evans, 49 Butternut Drive, Norwich, Connecticut. Hello, you all know me pretty much. Actually, tonight I'm here to commend a couple of you First, I'd like to commend Joanne Philbrick for resolution number 9, if that's your resolution, and that's encouraging full repayment of all the Derbygate funds. This is only fair to all. I mean, I listened to the city manager's budget up here tonight. He didn't offer any one of us to pay 25% of our taxes back, no, did he? No. So we'd expect full repayment. That's only fair. Find out whose money it is first before you distribute it. You say it's not the taxpayers? Well, then whose is it? But you shouldn't decide it if it's not yours. So I commend Councilwoman Philbrick for that. Number 2, President Pro Tem Nystrom for calling for Mr. Bilder's removal. Thank you for that. I think it should go further. I think there needs to be a full investigation with regard to NPU. And in supporting the first gentleman's point, NPU apparently has got a lot more money than they know what to do with CMEEC. So why aren't they paying more than their 10%? I would hope for a full investigation and auditing to be done on NPU and CMEEC accounts, because many in the community believe this is just the tip of the iceberg that we found. This needs to be investigated and evaluated further, possibly by an outside auditing agency. My next point, if allegations of Mr. Bilder about Mr. Schlow steering contracts from NPU are considered, one can only hope Mr. Greg Schlow, recuses himself from the ethics hearing regarding CMEEC, NPU, and Bilder in the future. The phrase that the citizens of Norwich deserve better has been used frequently as of late. It's got a chance, we have a chance to improve right now. I hope some of these things, some of these points are considered by some of you, if not all of you. And let's just keep it above board. There should be no secrets here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak on the resolutions? Anyone else wishing to speak on the resolutions at hand? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Rodney Boyce, 62 Roosevelt Avenue. Item 4, Allen Associates. Back a while ago, I approached them to buy a piece of property. I didn't get a call back, not one time. I called them 4 or 5 times. Not one single call back did I get. All of a sudden, a buyer appeared for a particular piece of property, and it was done. Boom, just like that, with conditions. Now, I've been doing real estate for a long time, about 50-some years. I'd rather take a good deal with no conditions than to have a deal fall apart later on because of other. Anyways, the thing that really bothered me was not even a considerate call, not a call back. So what are you people entertaining this guy for? It's not the first time in the past 25 years that I've called Allen Associates to buy a piece of property, and they've been fluffed off. But we have them for a real estate agent. Now I understand that getting rid of this property and stuff is probably beneficial to us because a real estate agent does certain things that a normal person or a purchasing agent, someone else can't do. And that's fine. Get a different real estate agent, please. Money's expended by CMEEC. The guy that runs it should have been fired in the first place for allowing it. Whether somebody pays it back or not, that's up to you folks. But I think utility company can do a better deal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak on tonight's agenda? Anyone else wishing to speak on tonight's agenda items? Anyone else wishing to speak on tonight's agenda items? Hearing none, I thank you all very much.
Relative to setting the first and second public hearings on the budget for fiscal year 2017-2018.
A motion and a second, please. Alderwoman Philbrick, Alderman Braddock. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Relative to an appointment to the Youth Service Advisory Board.
Motion and a second, please. Alderwoman Gould, Alderman Braddock. Is there discussion? This would be a regular member to the Youth Service Advisory Board, Judith W. Post. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Relative to authorizing City Manager John Salamone to execute and deliver an extension to a lease agreement with the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation pertaining to lease of state land on Route 32 and Route 82 at West Thames Street and east of the West Branch of the Yannick River.
A motion and a second, please. Alderwoman Philbrick, Alderman Braddock. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? It's unanimous.
Relative to enter into a listing agreement with Allen and Associates Realtor for 15 Park Street.
A motion and a second, please. Alderwoman Gould, Alderman Braddock. Is there discussion? Yes, sir.
Is there anybody going to re-examine the performance of this Realtor as far as returning calls to people who actually want to buy properties? We heard concerns by one of our citizens that spoke out during public comments. Is there any assessment mechanism in place where we can rate our vendors that are providing these services if they're not providing the services that they're saying they're supposed to provide?
I don't think it's a formal process. The Public Works Committee or Subcommittee of the Council is well aware of the process, and I think they are the ones who would be the front line of doing an evaluation on the services provided by any vendor of the city with respect to the sale or lease of city property. So I think I'd rely on them to be the ones to provide the first information to the council one way or another.
So since we have 3 members, could you bring that up and put that on your agenda?
Absolutely.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Anything else? Those in favor? It's unanimous.
Relative to creating a committee of sale for 19 North Cliff Street.
Motion and a second, please. Alderman Braddock, Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Relative to city manager being authorized and directed to enter into an agreement with William W. Backus Hospital.
Is there a motion and a second, please? Alderman Martin, Alderman Braddock. Is there discussion? Yes, ma'am?
Oh, I think it's just important that the public know that this is more of a symbolic agreement. There is no money or obligation to the city. That's my understanding. And that's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Just so the public understands that this is a symbolic gesture. It's not encumbering us in any manner.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. At this time, with the council's understanding, I will recuse myself. And President Pro Tem, it's all yours.
Relative to a motion to reconsider.
I'd ask for a motion from the floor.
Motion.
Alderman Braddock, second. Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion on the Resolution 7? Yes, Alderwoman Philbrick.
This resolution is before us because of what happened at the last meeting. I was confused, and when I am confused, I try to become unconfused. Some people perceived it as in a variety of ways. Some people thought perhaps I was having a stroke, perhaps I was being bullied, but we need to be clear. My suggestion to the council would be, when we have controversial or complicated issues, it would be important before we vote to say, perhaps it would be the mayor, or in the mayor's absence, President Pro Tem, that a vote in the affirmative will result in this, a vote in the negative will result in this, so that people are clear. These are complicated, controversial, and extremely important decisions. So that's why I am asking my council members to bring it back. It has been extrapolated, so I hope the language is clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on Resolution 7? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, Resolution 7 to reconsider? All those opposed? The motion to reconsider carries. The vote is 5-1.
I think there should be, now that the council's approved this, Philbrook should make a specific request that this be reconsidered. That sort of clears the way, but anyone who was on the prevailing side at the last meeting, that is those who voted against the amended resolution, have the power to make a request. The council's cleared the way, and I just think for the record, it should be your request to reconsider the action at the last meeting.
So here we go again.
All you do is you say, I move that we reconsider the
I
action.
move to reconsider.
The action was taken on Resolution 10 at the last
Okay.
meeting.
Is there a second?
No, it's her request.
You don't need a second, but fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Resolution 8, please.
Relative to recommending that the city clerk keep a file.
Is there a, Alderman Tucker Braddock, is there a second? Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion on Resolution 8? Yes, Alderman Braddock.
I think there is a file on this particular incident it's been brought forth by the Ethics Commission. It's been delivered to the council. And so I think there is enough of a file on this already without creating an individual file. I don't find that's necessary. If one wants to look into our actions, they can do so by that means. I see no need to create an independent file for this case.
Thank you. Further discussion. Alderwoman Philbrick.
I have mixed emotions about this. The city clerk's office is inundated and understaffed as it is, and this adds another level of record keeping to that office. However, the city clerk's office is the definitive keeper of the records. Things in her office, or his office, if that may be, stay there. They don't necessarily fall under retention schedules. And this is an issue that I think will only get bigger. And I think it's important that we maintain a separate and distinct file.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 8? All those opposed? Motion carries. The count is 5-1.
Relative to recommending the full repayment.
Entertain a motion for Resolution 9 on the floor. Alderman Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Alderman Martin.
I have a question to this, because this is a concern to me. We've already had one person who's already made restitution to the city according to what the Ethics Commission has proposed here. Now, the city accepted that check for payment of for that problem. How will bringing up restitution to full be handled in the case of somebody who has already made restitution to the current level that was expected to them? How would that be affected?
Well, the Ethics Commission recommended in that case that the restitution or repayment, or whatever you want to call it, be made at 25%. That recommendation came to the council, and the council can accept it or not as the council prefers, but it is what it is. I mean, that has been made. I don't know if the council's decision tonight is legally enforceable, if that's your question. If you were to go to court and say the council is so directed, you might not be able to collect it as a matter of law. Now, whether that makes any difference in a context like this, that's another question.
Alderman Martin, have further questions?
I'm going to reserve my time for a second bite of the apple. Go ahead.
Alderman Braddock, you have the floor.
The amount of money that was already paid, does that go back to, the money that was already paid, does that go back to CMAQ? Does it go to the utilities? Where does that money go?
I don't know where it's going.
Mr. City Manager.
That money's been deposited in the town general fund at this point.
And where will it go from there?
It wasn't clear what the repayment would be, so we have put it in the general fund at this point. There was no clear directive of where it comes back, so it's in safekeeping in the general fund at this point.
But in theory, that's not really our money.
I think, I may be speaking out of turn, but I think that from the debate at the Ethics Commission, that they perceive that the percentage of involvement, if not ownership, that Norwich has in CMAQ is 25%, roughly. And that's where the figure was derived from. But they make no specific recommendation as I'm looking at it.
My concern, Attorney Driscoll, is that the monies that were paid did not come from this community. They came from CMAQ.
Well, the Ethics Commission did recommend that any reimbursement be given to a fund that helps those in Norwich who struggle financially.
Thank you.
That was their recommendation to the council. The council has accepted the report, but if the council requires action on that recommendation by specific resolution, that can be something brought up at a later date.
Do you wish to continue?
No, if there was a restitution, why would it go to a special fund and not divvy it up amongst all of the rate users? If that was the initial thought, why not share it with all of the rate users that use NPU in Norwich? Thank you.
You're welcome. Further discussion? Alderwoman Filbert.
This is uncharted territory. We're making what we do here tonight and going forward will have great impact on the city of Norwich and the citizens for years to come. It's like being a parent. It doesn't come with an owner's manual. It's on-the-job training. We're going to have bumps as we go along. I think the first bump is who decided that we would accept the check? Who decided that it would go into the general fund? I am in favor of 100% restitution. I don't get 25% off my taxes. I don't have to pay 25% of my taxes or my utility bill. The Ethics Commission has made recommendations. Does the City Council have any teeth? This remains to be seen. But my purpose in doing this is to, in conjunction with the other members of the board, the majority of them, I believe, our voice to you is that we are not ignoring this. We are willing and able to put ourselves out there and show the people that we do have opinions on this. Do we have any legal authority? I think, again, as I say, this is a work in progress, and it's going to be a long road. But this is a symbolic gesture on behalf of the council that says we believe, if it votes that way, that full restitution would be the appropriate road to take. And I would say that it just, in my personal opinion, it does not need to go into a needy fund. I would say that 99.9 of the citizens of Norwich are struggling. So it needs... So let's see if we get the money, and then we'll figure out where we're going to put it.
Thank you. Alderman Nash, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be in favor of resolution number 9. I'm also in favor of the Ethics Commission's suggestion to put it in a fund that could be used to assist our less fortunate citizens in our city. The money's got to go somewhere. I'd rather have an unfortunate citizen who needs a little help to get a little bit of funding versus my 2 cents that I'll get cut off my next bill, because it's going to add up to 40-some thousand ratepayers or how many, and I'll get 2 cents off my next month's bill. So, I'd appreciate that, but honestly, I'd rather see someone whose lights were turned off or about to be turned off because of an unfortunate situation take benefit of these individuals who went on this trip, and, whether it was CMAQ that paid for it or 5 other communities that pitched in for it or whatever, I think there was a violation here. I also want to address real quickly, and I apologize for missing the caucus on Sunday, but I do have a little concerns here. I've been taking email from individuals complaining that we've sat on our hands, we've done nothing, we're corrupt, we're this, we're that, we're winking and nodding again. Let me explain something to you right now, and I don't care what we do from this point on, whether it's an personal private investigation or we hire agencies or whatever. I think everyone on the MPU board should be dismissed. I believe Mr. Bilder should be fired. I believe we should start scratch, okay? Anyone that was on the board prior to the Derby should be gone. Anyone that came on after the Derby should be given an opportunity. I'm a little disgusted by the individual we appointed last time who didn't do what we thought he was going to do. Bothers me a great deal. All right? So, for the people that emailed me and said I'm corrupt, you can keep your $92 a month. I don't need it. Okay? So if you think I'm corrupt, you're crazy. Okay? And I think the people that went on this trip were inappropriate. I think they deserve a punishment. I believe 100% reimbursement is more than fair for anyone that went on a trip, including anyone they took with them on the trip. Now, if you want to consider sending me emails telling me what kind of a moron I am and how stupid I am and how corrupt I am, keep them coming. I laugh at them when they come. All right? And some of them I answer. So that's all I got to say about this. It was wrong. We have to fix it. And I will agree with Mrs. Philbrick. It's new. We haven't had this before. This is all new. So where it goes from here, I don't know. But all I know is every time I call, I'm told, you don't have any teeth. You don't have any power. You can't do that. You can't do that. I don't know what we're supposed to do up here. Okay? So that's where I'm at with it. So have fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Martin.
I want to echo some of the same sentiments Alderman Nash has. A lot of people said that we weren't doing anything. We wanted to let this thing go through the ethics process because that was the proper procedure, to let them do their work, not taint their investigation, not prejudice their pool of people and their information. Let them have a real bite of the apple because it was their apple to bite on. So we didn't want to interfere with them. We let that process go forward, and it went forward. As far as the restitutions, I agree that, people shouldn't be taking their mother and father on trips. It's just wrong. I can't fathom it whatsoever. My mom and dad didn't raise me to be that way. And I'm sure most of you, your mom and dads didn't raise you that way. You know what's right and you know what's wrong. To go on an all-paid expense vacation is wrong when it's on other people's money. And that's what this was, other people's money. It wasn't their money. It was CMAQ's money. And that's where that money should go back, to CMAQ. Not to a charity. It's still other people's money. It was from the ratepayers of NPU, and they're part of the CMAQ, and that's where it should go. The only part that concerns me about CMAQ is they have no credibility and no morals and no ethics. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done what they did. Who in their right mind would have thought that this is acceptable? It's just not. We tried to leave an honorable way out for some of these people that came up on these charges. They chose not to take it, and they chose to thumb their noses at us. Now we're put into a predicament where we have to do things and be the heavy and stuff that we really don't want to do. And number one, we didn't cause. we're just left holding the bag. And there's going to be a lot more of this going forward. But rest assured, we hear you. We understand your concerns, and we're going to do the very best that we can with the information provided to us and whatever abilities and powers that we have. We're just going to use them to the best of our abilities. When we wrote the ethics, the committee that I was on, and submitted to the City Council in 2008, the scope of what's going on now was never created for anything this big. This is something for a judge and a jury to really decide. You know? It really isn't. I'm not an attorney. I don't have the knowledge, the skill, or the ability to do that job. But I have common sense, and I can look at things and I can say if something's right or something's wrong. And that's where we're at. So I'll be supporting this. But the only concern I have is the funds that have already been accepted. Is this going to be retroactive to them, or is that a dead issue of the people who already paid their funds because the city's already accepted the money and that moves forward? That's my only concern with the 100% is, you know, the people that have already paid their check. I mean, when the city accepted it, does that, I believe that precludes us from going after them any further, I would imagine. Corporate counsel?
Is that a question?
Not having seen the check, I don't know if it's said in accordance, satisfaction, or language like that, but I don't think that it precludes you or empowers you one way or another. It just is what has happened to date. The decision of the council tonight is whatever decision you make, and that'll be an issue that will be visited at that time.
Alderman Martin, you all set?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Alderman Gould, you have the floor.
Thank you. I will be supporting resolution number 9. First off, I'd like to thank Carol Menard and the Ethics Commission for the work that they did do. As Alderwoman Philbrick said, we're really in uncharted territory, and they did a tremendous job with something we have never had to face in the city of Norwich before. Number 2, they made a recommendation, and a recommendation is just that. We recommend. We cannot, and the council can also recommend, but we don't have the power or the authority or a mechanism in place to make anybody do anything that they don't want to do. This has to come from the people who went on the trip to make the restitution. That has to come from here, because they know that's the right thing to do. But we cannot make them. And a lot of people, as the other aldermen have said, have reached out, emailed us, called us, and complained that we have done nothing, as Alderman Nash said, that we sat on our hands and you did nothing. And as Alderman Martin pointed out, we had to let this process take its course without derailing it, commenting about it, talking about it. It had to go through to the end. Now we're making some recommendations, and that's all we can do. And we can be disappointed in the people that went, that they made a mistake, and yes, we're all disappointed. There's a black cloud that's sort of hanging over the city of Norwich. We have to make that black cloud go away. So I'm hoping that the people who went on this trip and were found in violation of our ethics rules will do the right thing. And I also hope that the people who sit on the NPU board will also consider doing the right thing for the city of Norwich. What that right thing is, they will have to find that in their hearts to do the right thing for the city so that we can move forward. We have budget challenges that we have to face. We have other issues. We need to sort of put this to bed and move on. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? I will be brief. The track record so far is not very good. They attended the trip. The ethics reached their findings about that event in 2016, and then we saw last week the reappointment of the leadership of that team, and I'll use that word loosely, with no change. My expectation is that public pressure, peer pressure, taking a public stand is important, and that's what this council is doing. In 2 weeks, I will introduce a resolution appointing a committee to investigate the 2016 Derby trip, specifically the involvement of the two commissioners, Commissioner Grona and Commissioner Beauclair. So there's more to come, unfortunately, because I think everyone in the city would like this to go away, but it's not going away, and neither is our involvement, and I anticipate our involvement ratcheting up to a whole new level beyond that. So I will be supporting Resolution 9. It's something I actually started talking about last October when I went to the NPU board, as did many other members on this council, and we asked them to have full disclosure and deal with the issue of restitution, and here we are still waiting all these months later. I urge this resolution's adoption. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-1.
An ordinance relative to appropriations for the City of Norwich and the City and Town Consolidated District of said city for fiscal year 2017-2018.
I'm sorry, just, basically, why don't, if you could just repeat the schedule of the
Okay,
hearings.
so for ordinance number 1, the first public hearing is scheduled for April 13th, 2017 at 7:30, and the second public hearing is scheduled for May 1st, 2017 at 7:30.
And then an ordinance concerning the tax levies of the list of October 1st, 2016.
And again, the first public hearing is scheduled for April 13th, 2017 at 7:30, and the second public hearing is scheduled for May 1st, 2017 at 7:30. That's it? Yes. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, please. Alderman Braddock. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Dalton was